When you can't do it all, do what you can. Compassion for others. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
This is the FlashPoint Television Network.
Welcome to FlashPoint NewsBreak, where the truth lives. Here are today's news stories.
Welcome to NewsBreak. I'm Gene Bailey. The goal of NewsBreak is to bring you the stories from around the globe that affect your life. Let's get started with what's happening.
Let's talk about Anthony Fauci. Yesterday, I was surprised. I don't know if you guys were at home, that he took the fifth.
Yes.
Because
and as soon as he did it, everyone in the background was just like...
I know. It didn't stop the questions from continuing, though, and some revelations came out through the questions.
111 times.
111 times he was pleading the fifth.
I had to read it every time,
and
too.
You know what? These are questions that we all have that I feel like he owes the public. I know he doesn't want to perjure himself, but he is pardoned. So why not just answer the questions? You're not going to perjure yourself if you're in, if you say anything, because President Biden pardoned him. And that's what Rand Paul is saying. He's saying he said he doesn't think that Fauci has the right to invoke the fifth after the pardon. And he said that he wants a committee vote next week. Anyway, Rand Paul is threatening to hold Fauci in contempt after he refused to answer the questions. Here's a montage, if you missed it, of some very important questions and then Fauci pleading the fifth.
Can you explain to the committee why you chose to fund this dangerous research in China?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
How do you ensure that our national security and public health is protected when private organizations work with foreign countries of concern and have the no government oversight, such as the Eco Health Alliance research grant you funded in a CCP military lab?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Can't even answer that question.
No, and I think what's interesting is what happens next, because Senator Rand Paul obviously is going to vote next week in his committee to hold Fauci in contempt. But as Senator Paul told us yesterday afternoon on the air, that this is also ultimately going to be a litigated case of whether or not he was protected, whether he was justified in invoking the fifth, because people want answers. Millions of Americans deserve to know answers. And for the guy that never saw a camera he didn't like, obviously didn't want to give those answers.
But some of the questions were revealing. Number one is that he had 9 different people apply for prizes. I want you to put me in for this prize and win $1 million. You got $1 million. Where's that money? Number two, it turns out he deleted, they say, a ton of information. I mean, those diaries was so embarrassing and was so damning because it shows he was saying something differently publicly than he was privately. And knowing that he also deleted a ton of it, it makes you wonder how soon till, and I think Rand Paul indicated to you yesterday, he's going to bring the assistant that deleted it forward.
Yeah.
Because
so who's in it?
Those are
Put her on, her or him on.
And specifically what you're talking about is some of the senators said, do you recognize this organization? And do you recognize this award? And he said, I plead the fifth. And then the senator would explain, this is an award that you won, that you applied for through your staffers. Your staffers applied for you. You won the award, and you got, for instance, $900,000 in a cash bonus for winning that award. And then he talked about how his staffers were trying to apply to all these awards, and he won so many awards during that period, and he won so much money during that period that even his paychecks were more than the president of the United States, they said. They said, you're supposed to serve our country, but you're making more than the president. And they say his net worth is, I think they said $12 million yesterday.
Yeah. It's hard to have.
Made a lot of money during COVID when people were dying.
Maybe he's a day trader. Maybe he's able to take his government salary and.
Well, that one award paid him almost $1 million.
All right.
And they said that the staffers, that's illegal for staffers to apply for that using government computers.
He played the fifth all morning long, but I don't think we've heard the end of this. I think there's more of this to come.
The Federal Reserve announced its 5th interest rate decision of the year, and the board voted for no change. The central bank will hold its benchmark rate steady at a range of 3.5% to 3.75%. That's not as easy to read as you might think it is. Despite grappling with stubborn inflation and oil price volatility, that's what the data is doing in there. Markets opened down, and it only got worse after the Fed decision. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all dropped more than 1.5% today. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins me now. Kelly, break it down.
Yeah, look, I mean, interest rates holding steady. This wasn't much of a surprise. The market was pricing in a 64% chance that was going to happen. But I think, frankly, Major, my bigger takeaway was the fact that this was not a unanimous decision. It was 9-3. There were 3 voting members of the Fed that actually wanted to hike rates by 0.25 percentage point. And the reason being is that inflation is sticky. We have been above the Fed's 2% target for over 5 years right now. And we're seeing oil prices surge again with things heating back up with Iran. That was why the markets opened significantly down this morning. And it kind of felt like, based on what Warsh was saying in that press conference, he kept calling it a good family fight, Major. I'm wondering when this is going to become that Thanksgiving family blow up. Because if you think about September, if we're continuing on the way that energy prices are moving right now, it's going to make more of a case for an interest rate hike. Certainly not something that the president wants to see, but something that Warsh said, and I quote, "We will not hesitate to act if things require it."
And Kelly, quick reminder to our audience how the Fed board works and what the vote needs to be to actually have an interest rate go up or go down.
Simple majority, right? There are 12 voting members, and you need to have a majority to make a change or to not make a change, right? So today you had 9 people saying, let's hold rates steady, 3 people saying, I want to hike. Not close to a majority, but based on the discussion that he describes, it feels like the vibe is not whether we hike interest rates, but more becoming when, Major.
And the Fed chairman does not have a super vote. It's one vote just like every other Fed governor, correct?
That's right. So when everyone was saying, oh, Kevin Warsh, he's President Trump's pick, he's going to raise, or rather, he's going to lower interest rates, it's one person, one vote. You could be persuasive, maybe, and your vote can mean more in that room. But at the end of the day, it's just one vote.
A new development in the Charlie Kirk assassination case, as Utah County prosecutors are now urging a judge to move the case toward trial. In a new court filing, they write, this is as likely as straightforward a bind-over decision as this court will ever see. Prosecutors point to surveillance video, ballistics, DNA, text messages, and testimony from Robinson's former roommate, Lance Twiggs. Joining us right now is George Washington University law professor and Fox News contributor, that man right there, Jonathan Turley. Professor, good morning to you.
Thank you, Steve.
Essentially what the prosecutors are saying is, we've got everything we need. This guy's guilty. Judge, let's go.
Yeah, usually you say, my gosh, the prosecutors have everything but a confession. They've got a confession. It was actually relayed through his lover, Lance. So this trial is going to be the shortest game of Clue in history. You're going to start out with Colonel Mustard in a dining room with a butcher's knife, and the game is over. I mean, there's nothing left for the trial. The problem for the defense counsel, and I certainly can sympathize. I've been a criminal defense attorney for 30 years. There is no defense here. There's nothing for you to do at that trial. But the real problem is that usually you can offer a plea to avoid the necessity of a trial if you take the death penalty off the table. But the prosecutors have no reason to do that because they've got a lead pipe cinch of a case. So, you can't go to them and say, look, we'll save you the trouble for a trial. And the prosecutors are saying, there is no trouble. We're happy to go to trial.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned his former romantic partner, roommate, Lance Twiggs. Here he is talking about what Tyler Robinson told him.
So he acted erratically. Was he pacing? Was he just sitting down, relaxing?
No, he was walking around a lot.
And that's within the home? Mm-hmm. And did he talk about what he had done?
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. he started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it.
Okay, he wishes he hadn't done it. So you've got this eyewitness to the confession. You've got DNA. You've got text messages. If you're sitting in a jury, if it goes to a jury, one of those would be enough to convict him. It seems like they got the trifecta.
Oh, absolutely. You could take 90% of the evidence off the table and get an easy conviction. I mean, a lot of these juries are just going to be looking at their watches for most of the trial because it really is over. And what's really chilling about these accounts is to get insights into the mind of this guy. You know, he just murdered someone in a political assassination, and he's telling his lover, gosh, my dad's going to be really mad at me if I don't bring back the gun. And it's just this disconnect with the lack, with the sort of humanity of the moment, that you just murdered a man, a father, a political figure, and you're worried that daddy's going to be angry with you.
Yeah. You know, and the other thing is, Jonathan, some of the information the prosecutors presented included the fact that apparently this guy said, I'd been thinking about it for about a week. I think we think with assassinations, they're obsessed with something, and they work it out in their head for months or years or something like that, and then they go out and do it. Over the course of a week, he developed this plot and then pulled it off.
Yeah, I think that is just one of the most extraordinary aspects of this, that he could pull this off, taking the shot from that location. It all fell together for him in a tragic way for the entire nation. And, you know, part of the criticism of this judge has been he's taking so long, and it is moving slower than most cases. But I think what the judge's thought is that he does have an open and shut case here. The only way it becomes anything other than that is if he makes a mistake. And as defense counsel, I got to tell you, that's what I'd be focusing on, to try to get the judge to make a mistake, get this thing appealed, reverse, come back, see if I can get a deal. So he's moving very slowly and deliberatively, and it's driving a lot of folks crazy. But I think that his view is, look, this trial is going to be over the minute it starts, as long as I don't make a mistake.
And the world will be watching.
Russia and Ukraine are intensifying strikes against each other. Ukraine is targeting drone strikes on several sites owned by Wildberries Warehouse, often called Russia's Amazon. Meanwhile, at least 8 people are dead and dozens are injured after Russia launched an air attack in Ukraine. And now Poland is accusing Russia of violating its airspace. ABC's Britt Clennett has more on all of that. So, Britt, what's the latest on the fighting?
Hey, Diane. Yeah, Russia unleashing again one of its largest air assaults on Ukraine in weeks. We're talking more than 70 attack drones, 70 missiles, 280 attack drones, rather, that killed at least 8 people, including 3 children. It also battered homes, infrastructure as well, across multiple cities. Now, the attack, it came just hours after President Zelensky had warned that Moscow was preparing for a massive attack, and days after he met with President Trump in Washington to press for a license to allow Ukraine to produce Patriot interceptor missiles domestically. That's something that President Trump has said would take place, but there's no clear timeline on when it will. Those are systems that Kyiv says are vital to stop ballistic missiles like we saw those used overnight from happening and getting through. And we're seeing that happen again and again as Russia kind of changes tack to this strategy of long, sustained attacks, rather than these short, sharp attacks we've seen previously. Now, Zelensky, he has repeatedly linked the protection of civilians directly to the supply of air defense missiles, writing on social media that the protection of people's lives depends directly on their willingness or lack of willingness to provide air defense missiles. Now, local officials report 8 dead, as I mentioned, among them a 6-year-old girl and 2 boys aged 11 and 17. They were killed when that Russian ballistic missile struck a family home in the village of Radushne near Kryvyi Rih.
And how major are the Ukrainian strikes on the Wildberries warehouses?
I mean, pretty big. You know, we're seeing these reciprocal overnight attacks in Russia, this time on a warehouse in the city of Penza, injuring one person. The warehouse, it belongs, as you mentioned, to Wildberries, often called Russia's Amazon, and it has been hit repeatedly by Ukrainian drone and missile attacks in recent days. Wildberries, it also reported a fire breaking out at its logistics facility in Udmurtia's, that's the river port city of Sarapul. And Ukrainian drones, what we've seen is they've struck more than a dozen Wildberries sites since July 18. And really that puts an estimated 15% of the company's warehouse capacity out of commission. Wildberries has said that a full assessment of the damage will take around 30 days, but Ukraine has previously said that it is targeting Wildberries because the company allegedly supports the Russian military by supplying, drone components, navigation equipment, and other gear too. But the strikes, they also appear to be aimed at harming Russia's economy more broadly and making everyday Russians feel the consequences of Putin's war.
This isn't just merch, it's a movement. FlashPoint gear is made for those who won't back down, who stand for truth, faith, and freedom.
Go to the FlashPointStore.com.
From t-shirts and hats to more.
That's where all the new products are. Check it out. You'll be glad you did.
Every piece is designed to speak before you do. Wherever life takes you, wear what you believe. Wear FlashPoint. Order now at FlashPointStore.com. Don't just follow the movement, represent it.
Well, oil prices surging today after President Trump issued warnings to Iran, saying the regime is, quote, going to get a beating after an attempted surprise attack on American forces in the Middle East. West Texas crude jumping nearly 7% today before settling just below $85 a barrel as investors fear fresh disruptions to global energy supplies. Joining us now is U.S. Oil and Gas Association President Tim Stewart. Tim, good to see you. Okay, the roller coaster ride of oil prices continues back up again after a brief respite over the past few days. I think you got a lot of consumers at home saying, is this just going to keep yo-yoing? What are my gas prices going to do? Tim, how are you reading what's happening right now?
Well, I think you're describing it's a yo-yo situation right now, and it's frustrating as somebody who filled up his gas tank this morning, and I'm paying a lot more than I did, six months ago. Brian, I think that the situation you see in the markets right now is we're starting to price that risk premium back into the markets. The physical inventory markets are really, really tight as well. And so moves like we saw over the last 48 hours where the Houthis and the Iranians were firing missiles at Jordan and other places that might not have moved the market as much as it would have 4 weeks ago, now has a tendency to move it a bit further because the markets know that we don't quite have the cushion that we had 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Can you talk about that cushion? Because I hear a lot about it. I think it's really important, and it's not just the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which obviously has been depleted significantly, but you've got other more operational storage areas. Cushing is one of those names that we often hear that are very low. Are we sitting on a precipice where if the Strait of Hormuz remains really locked up, we started to get into very dangerous territory, Tim?
Cushing's a good example. The high level of the Cushing storage capacity is somewhere between 70 and 90 million barrels. On a good day, it's 30 to 40, and right now we're just dropped under 20, and so things are really, really tight. But the fact of the matter is you look at the industry all across the board, refinery runs are at 97% capacity right now. We're exporting light crude to our allies who can refine that quicker than we can. We're bringing in Venezuelan crude for our refineries in the Gulf. We're moving that refined product using the Jones Act waiver all across the country. We're in a much better situation than we probably should be or probably deserve to be because of the ability to adapt quickly. The other thing that's been really interesting to watch in this is how quickly the Gulf producers themselves have looked for alternative routes, transportation networks to move their product to market as well. So this is a generational shift. 2 years from now, the Strait of Hormuz won't matter near as much as it does right now. But again, when gasoline is just above $4, people feel it. We understand that. The last thing we as domestic producers want to do is to be producing something that our consumers can't afford to buy. This volatility is tough on us as well. We hope that the administration will be able to get a resolution to the situation in the Middle East as quickly as possible.
You're right to point out there's a lot of short-term pain here, but there are some extraordinary long-term changes that are going to help American consumers and, frankly, global consumers because it gets Iran out of the picture. Tim Stewart, we got to leave it there. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Admiral Brad Cooper is certainly in the mix, and he remains one of the top planners for the U.S. military. And when we think back to Operation Epic Fury, much of the bombing campaign that was conducted alongside Israeli forces was coordinated on an hourly basis behind the scene. U.S. Central Command actually has soldiers here in places like Tel Aviv and other locations in Israel to ensure that this coordination is taking place at the highest level. And I mention Israel because there is a possibility that Israeli jets are used if this broader strike package is approved by President Trump. What we're seeing right now is a display of deterrence by the United States. Last night, heavy strikes were ordered against Iran to show the Iranians that there is a cost and that they will pay a price if they try to attack U.S. forces or allies in the region. As it relates to this larger strike package, the president does have a variety of options, and he is likely to speak with top advisors this week to determine if there is an off-ramp here, if the Iranians are actually willing to make an agreement that can be adhered to. And the president talked about this yesterday in the Oval Office. They are dealing with two groups of people inside of Iran. One, the relatively more moderate voices. We're talking about Abbas Araghchi, the country's foreign minister, Mohammad Kalibaf, the country's parliament speaker. But it's the IRGC that is ordering these missile launches against U.S. forces in the region. And if they can't rein in the IRGC, there's really no point of a deal because it won't be agreed to.
Trey, there are two stories this morning I wanted to ask you about. One is cell phones. The military might surrender cell phones from our troops because they say the cell phone videos shared online can help Iran target American bases. And the other one is China. Reuters is reporting that Iran is set to receive 400 Chinese-made shoulder-fired air defense missile launchers, about $60–70 million purchase. President said he's very surprised if that were true. What do you know?
So the cell phone headline is not so surprising. It's a general OPSEC operational security issue in the region, and armies around the world will actually ensure that their soldiers are not providing targeting data to a regime like Iran. This story about China is incredibly significant, and the president was asked about this in the Oval Office yesterday, and he's been very clear that he sent a message in person to Chinese President Xi Jinping not to supply the Iranians with any sort of missiles or ammunition. The story that is today in Reuters is very important because it details the report. We're talking about a Chinese company that is reportedly going to provide Iran with at least 400 shoulder-fired missiles over land. And these are missiles, man-pads, that are used to shoot down helicopters and jets. The same type of missile that shot down that U.S. plane earlier this year over southwestern Iran. And it speaks to how dangerous these shoulder-supplied missiles can be because they're easily accessible and they're very easy to move on the ground. They just require one person to use. And if this takes place, and if these missiles are supplied to the Iranian regime, it is a direct threat to U.S. planes over the skies of Iran, and it could lead to the deaths of American soldiers.
Trey, let me ask you to go back to the IRGC for a second, because clearly General Ahmad Vahidi of the IRGC has not stopped striking U.S. bases in Jordan at Muwafaq and at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia because he's seeing the U.S. build up. So walk us forward through what we're likely to see today and the rest of the week. How do you not hit that with a greater intensity, assuming that there's no sign of the IRGC letting up, trying to stop a U.S. buildup?
Yeah, it's a great question. The Iranian plan here backfired in a way because they thought that by attacking these countries in the Gulf like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, that it would weaken a coalition between these countries. But what it's doing is creating an informal security cooperation. And we actually saw during this conflict some of these Gulf countries get more directly involved. And reports indicate they are considering further offensive action as they come under attack. What was very interesting earlier this week was the public announcement by Saudi Arabia that they actually participated alongside the United States in strikes against Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militias. The fact that they are now saying this publicly is a change in position by leadership in Saudi Arabia and an indication that they are certainly fed up with the Iranian regime and proxy forces threatening their energy infrastructure.
Meantime, it's day 4 of our week-long series highlighting the threat of socialism and the radical agenda being pushed by Democratic Socialists of America.
And it comes as a brand new poll reveals 1/3 of Democrats now identify as Democratic Socialists.
Alexandria Hopp is in Washington following the money. Hey, Alex.
Hey, good morning to you. You know, that's not an easy feat, really. But one area of irony that critics see within the Democratic Socialists of America model is that their real power comes from the unpaid labor of the activists they recruit. The DSA can organize phone banks for a candidate, knock some doors, which can save thousands, even millions, for a socialist running for office and indirect contributions. But the DSA, you know, it's not a political party. It is a tax-exempt 501c4 social welfare organization, and its war chest is mostly built by member dues. Those are broken down as monthly or yearly. That can either be on a sliding scale based on income, a portion of your salary, 1 to 3%. So a couple options there. Democratic fundraiser turned author Evan Barker tells Fox that despite the DSA railing against billionaires and the wealthy class, the candidates they support simply time out when major cash infusions are received to sell this grassroots story.
It's just a virtue signaling thing. It's something that they say in primaries, in Democratic primaries, as a signifier to differentiate themselves from their opponent. The reality is that corporate PACs would never give in a Democratic primary. They usually wait until there's a winner that's emerged.
Yeah, so what the DSA is getting really good at is organizing. It provides labor resources, gives a person, a candidate, a whole lot of publicity, and then waits until they make it to the general election where the PAC or the super PAC money can flow.
This morning, the teen lifeguard who drew nationwide attention for a heroic rescue captured on dramatic video earlier this week is speaking out. Ryder Williams saying in a statement, "This is my job, and I love what I do," as the father of the boy he saved praises the teen's actions.
I mean, I cannot even express how much gratitude I have towards him.
16-year-old Williams giving more details about the incident off the coast of Santa Cruz, saying he ran into the ocean when he saw the child stumble in ankle-deep water. But due to the volatility of the water, he couldn't get the boy into a rescue tube or pull him out of the water because, quote, he was limp and the waves were pushing so hard. The bystander who captured that viral video telling NBC Bay Area the surf had been normal.
And then that just changed, and it changed in a heartbeat. And it caught a lot of people off guard.
Describing the moment when Williams reached the boy.
He had just like a gorilla grip, you know, that he wasn't going to let him get swept out any further.
Williams eventually getting him to shore with another lifeguard's help. The lifeguard's father telling The Guardian Williams knew the boy could die if he let him go, and that the teen said, quote, "I just was not going to let that happen." His father saying, "I almost started crying because how determined he was to save that boy's life makes me so proud." The video drawing widespread praise, including from the president, who invited Williams to the White House. But the lifeguard remaining humble, saying other lifeguards perform rescues just like this every day, and that he was just grateful to return the child safely to his family. That family also thankful.
He saved my child.
Sumit Rai, who was not on the beach, saying his son told him later that he'd been unconscious and drowning.
I'm just grateful that he's alive, and it's miraculous.
Joining the chorus of praise for that heroic moment.
I'm beyond grateful and forever grateful to Ryder.
Looking at it, Kaylee, I've watched every frame of this. The strength, the bravery, the poise that this teenager showed, it's just incredible. And it's only his first year lifeguarding.
Isn't that incredible? Guys, next up, his junior year of high school.
Oh, man.
But this is a young man whose dad is a firefighter, his mom a marine science researcher. He grew up in this Santa Cruz community, so his dad says he was born for this kind of work. And Ryder actually wants to follow in dad's footsteps, work for the fire service. But how about this? All the attention that Ryder's getting, he wasn't even aware of it. He's not on social media.
Oh, man.
Love him even more.
Right?
Watch FlashPoint every weeknight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. This has been a FlashPoint NewsBreak presentation.
I guess you're really going off to school. Mom.